Yeah, well, the Blackhawks are certainly a core piece of the story. It's much more than a hockey or a sports book. So what do you see as the central theme of the Breakaway?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I know for those, how many are Blackhawks fans? Yeah, everybody here. Yeah. See, I mean, that's, obviously the juice to the story is the Blackhawks and the big turnaround. What I found, though, I mean, to me, unless it's going to be like kind of a puff piece book, that's not enough of a story. So part of what led me to believe there's a book there was digging into this family. And what I discovered, so the theme that emerged is this almost Shakespearean relationships between father and son and brother, meaning Bill and Rocky. Just, I mean, the depth of their animosity to each other, the clashing, the horrible way Bill treated Rocky, basically excommunicating him from both the business and the family, the Blackhawks and the family. And then his brother, Peter, who was with the Blackhawks, and Rocky, and their long, I don't know, rivalry is the right word, but they just clashed all the way back to when they were kids, and I didn't know this. And so I started to see more of a family, family empire story, but just a family dynamic like we all have. I mean, I'll admit it, I have problems, sometimes with my father, and I think we all have a little dysfunction somewhere in our family. And it felt relatable, but, who am I kidding? It's about hockey. No, but I mean, and it's hard to kind of convey that, because, the hockey is fun, and there's plenty of hockey. It's kind of the backdrop. We were talking earlier. Anybody watch Glow, that show on Netflix? It's about the women of female wrestling in the 1970s. That's the backdrop. But the story, of course, is about these relationships and dynamics. And we're talking about the movie Titanic. It's like, which I didn't really care for, but the ship going down is not the story. It's the love story. Like, spoiler alert, the ship sinks. So that's what I tried to do with the book. So I think, all of you are Blackhawks fans, you'll love it. But even those who aren't, I think will like it too.
And the Blackhawks are a part of the Wirtz empire, but really there's a much bigger piece to it. Can you talk a little bit about how that empire came to be and what it all encompasses? Yeah,
it's interesting. I didn't know before I started researching it, and people would ask me, like, so the Wertz is that old money? They come up from some European royalty and come over here. Answer is very much no. It's very much an American, bootstraps kind of empire building story that traces the Wertzes, hopefully not in a dry way, but in a compelling way, from the original Wertz. Michael Wertz was a dirt poor farmer in Luxembourg, came over, steamer, landed in France, went to New York, and settled in a farm in suburban Illinois because the land was a lot like his land in Luxembourg. And so the Wertzes kind of spread out there, and I think it's near Mundelein, and kind of got involved with the town and so forth, but nothing big. And then this guy Arthur Wertz was born, I think, third or fourth generation, and his father Fred, for some reason, left the farm and went to Rogers Park and became a cop. Arthur was born, and it's still a mystery where he got this gene from, but he, during the Depression, was in real estate. He was cash rich, and he started buying arenas. He bought Chicago State, the old Chicago Stadium. He bought Madison Square Garden, St. Louis, Detroit. There were a couple of others. And so cornered the market kind of on these big stadiums, and with Chicago Stadium came the Blackhawks, and his partner owned, back in those days that you could do this, his partner owned the Detroit Red Wings, and they just kind of like, you know, such a conflict. I mean, they were like not even, they were brazen about like taking the good players to Detroit and just kind of letting the Blackhawks do whatever they want. So Arthur starts building there. He also made Sonia Henney. I don't know if you've ever heard that name. She was a figure skating queen of the day, and they turned her into like, I don't know, who's Ariana Grande, you know? I mean, she was a rock star, packing a figure skater. And they made these like Ziegfeld Follies shows. It's the forerunner of Ice Capades and Holiday on Ice and Disney on Ice. And so that was another way. And then he moved into liquor distributorship. And now the Wertzes are like, I think the third biggest in the country, liquor distributors. And I do want to mention one other thing. For a time, Arthur and his partner moved into boxing. They called it prize fighting back then, back before cable and stuff. And there was like one fight, Friday night fights, and you know, everything was rigged. And Arthur ruled all of it. And the feds finally broke it up as a monopoly, made him sell Madison Square Garden. But I mean, there were mobsters and these unsavory characters. And Jimmy, his partner, walking around $100 bills in his pocket. I mean, he was like slick back hair. And so it was really, Arthur was just such a character in himself, a book in himself. Gave birth to Bill, and here we are, yeah.
And I mean, Arthur comes to life in the book in a lot more details. My personal favorite is how he handled a poor earnings report that Rocky had one time. Are there any other anecdotes about Arthur Wertz that you can share that may help bring his character to life a bit more?
Yeah, well, I mean, so you guys know Bill, right? He's just cantankerous, belligerent, defiant, right? Almost in his, you know, pushing of the fans. So Rocky told me that Arthur made Bill look like a pussycat. That was his words, and he said he was the most intimidating man he'd ever met. Amazing businessman, but he was like 6'4", you know, 280, 300, huge, imposing figure. And one of the best stories was Rocky described what it'd be like for someone to come into Arthur's office. First of all, he had this round table built, King Arthur, the round table. Guess who was the king? And
Not subtle.
Yeah, right. So Arthur would be sitting at his desk, nothing on it, pencil. And someone would come in, and Arthur kept the air conditioning at like 50. And so immediately the person comes in all cocky, you know, I'm going to get a great deal. And after a few minutes, you know, shifting around, uncomfortable, Arthur's up, you know, higher. And Arthur would say, you know, I need to make some phone calls. I'll be right with you. And he'd make 25 phone calls. And the guy, you know, the person's just sitting there. And then Arthur would put down the phone and look up at the guy, and he had a sharpened pencil, and he would point the pencil at the person. And he had these glasses, he would put on glasses and take like this ritual. And Rocky was like, it's psychological warfare. And the story about Rocky was he came in with a bad report, and this is how. So he came in, went through the whole routine, and there was the report was just sitting on the desk, and Arthur didn't say a word, made 40 calls, Rocky thinks, and then said, I'll be right back, I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'll be right back, then we'll talk. So Rocky's sitting there, and 45 minutes later, no Arthur. And Rocky went to the secretary, he's like, is he still here? And they said, no, he went to dinner. That's his grandson. And that's how he let him know he wasn't happy with the report. So that's Arthur. Gives you a little taste of Arthur.
So that's just the beginning. And but really, in one of the reviews of The Breakaway, Rick Hogan says that the story has enough dysfunction for a couple of Eugene O'Neill plays. So coming from this figure, Arthur, how did all the dysfunction lay out, and what can you go into detail about that family dysfunction?
Yeah, I mean, Arthur is the author of it because he set out the succession plan. Arthur was an old school guy, so he said, when I die, the oldest son inherits the team. That was Bill. And that succession plan extended 3 generations. So when Bill died, no matter what Bill wanted, Rocky was the eldest, and he got the team. And so right there, Bill resented kind of being ruled from the grave by his grandfather. But the reason for the Eugene O'Neill drama, I wish I had written that line, it's great, is so Rocky's brother Peter was with the Blackhawks for decades and was almost to the point of obsequious to Bill. He would never question Bill. And had he taken the team, he would have made none of the changes that led to where we are today. And it was a good thing because Bill, I got in a little trouble with this before, but Bill was a little Trumpian in the way that, there's good old dollar Bill, as they called him, for his cheapness. He wouldn't put the games on TV, drove people insane, and he was defiant about it. He'd go rub your face in it. And you just couldn't say a word against Bill, or you were out. And Rocky did. He was the one person. So Bill shuffled Rocky off to run the liquor, excommunicated him from the team, basically. And Peter ran it, but he didn't do anything. Bill ran everything and ran the team into the ground. So it got so bad how Bill treated Rocky. He wrote a letter to Rocky's kids, his own grandchildren, and said, don't bother showing up for Thanksgiving, and I'll send you the Christmas gifts. I mean, that's his own grandkids. And wrote other ugly stuff to them. And, there's a restaurant, and Rocky would come in. There's a restaurant at the United Center, and Bill would be holding court over here with other family members, and Rocky would be over in the corner with his wife and maybe, one of his kids. And they never even looked at each other. It was crazy and ugly.
You alluded to this maybe a little bit, but why? Why do you think Bill treated Rocky so poorly?
Because, it really is because Rocky was the one person who dared cross Bill, confront him, and didn't back down. And you just didn't do that. If you look at all of the people in Bill's inner circle, they were all yes men. Mm-hmm. There was no one, who would stand up to him, and Rocky just couldn't do it. So he bided his time, and I think part of it too, Rocky was watching the team just in free fall, and he frankly didn't want his name associated with this, Hindenburg, this disaster, and so he stayed out, did great. The irony is, with the liquor side, when the team, as it went down, it was pulling money out of the liquor side, to prop it up. And, so.
And Rocky didn't have just a rough relationship with Bill. His relationship with Peter is deeply fraught. You mentioned even going back to childhood. What was that all about? And do you think they'll ever actually mend the fences?
No, I don't. They don't talk to this day. And Peter, Peter, when they were kids, they had a falling out over, it's kind of this lurid little side story that Peter had dated this older woman by a couple of decades and moved out of the house, and the family was, the parents were crushed, and Rocky was mad. And Rocky came home from college and confronted Peter, and he said, I think it was a holiday party. Peter was wearing a tie, and he pulled the tie up. Rocky didn't, and said, lesson 1, don't wear a tie to a fight. And from that moment on, they were kind of, they were at each other. And then later, when Bill and Peter were huddling together and plotting against Rocky, here's probably one of the most ugly and shocking things that really had not come out before, was that Bill and Peter were, I don't think it's too strong a word to say scheming, were conspiring against Rocky, whispering campaign, you can't trust Rocky, to other relatives, just spreading scurrilous rumors about him. I mean, their own family member, my God, And and when the father died and it was clear Rocky was going to take the team, Rocky told Peter said, I'm not going to make the changes. I'm not going to go against Dad's wishes. And Rocky said, well, then I can't make you president. You've got to, I'd love your help. But, and that really finally completely severed the relationship. Peter had actually gone behind Rocky's back and asked if there was anything in the will, Bill's will, that the team was left to him, and did stuff like that. It was just, it was a mess. But Rocky took over and never looked back, It's like, if you're not going to help me, okay. But I'm going to change this team dramatically.
And the family dysfunction wasn't the only thing that was dysfunctional. Bill had been known as a shrewd businessman for most of his life, but toward the end, and certainly at the point when Rocky took over, not just the Blackhawks, but the entire corporation was really in jeopardy of going under.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, I mean, the whole organization was tottering. I mean, you have to remember that this was 07, 08 was when the real estate crash happened, so the economy is plummeting. Meanwhile, the Blackhawks are drawing 4,000, 5,000 people a night in a 20,000 seat arena, selling no merchandise. And I mean, part of it is Bill's stubbornness. Bill thought the way back to profitability was that he'd cut his way back to profitability. So he cut staff, cut expenses. Just the TV thing got to be almost like this weird point of pride with him. He just wouldn't give in on it. Merchandise, they didn't have any marketing department. When Rocky took over the team on his first visit around, there's phones ringing, no one's answering the phones. And the phone that went to season tickets, he found out, didn't actually ring through to anybody. It just went off into nowhere. They didn't have Post-its, like a closet. Like Rocky's walking through, he's like, can I get a bottle of water? And like, no, we've got a cooler over in the corner. It's like, I don't guess you have Post-its, do you? And it's like, I don't know, maybe someone in a desk. That was the business, what the business had come to. And Rocky, I mean, I won't draw parallels here, but I mean, Rocky's philosophy was, you've got to spend, you've got to get great staff, and you've got to make things attractive to attract that great staff. Bill thought, we don't want to spoil the players and get them their own charter plane, they're too spoiled. Rocky thought, well, we're not going to get these star players if we have these crappy locker rooms. We don't have a sales staff, so how are we going to sell tickets? So he changed everything, and I mean, it seemed like it was overnight, but the difference, I mean, I think they've sold out probably more than 500 games in a row now, from 4,000 a night to 20,000. So, that's the difference,
Yeah, and you described a little bit about this, but the challenges that Rocky faced when he took over the Blackhawks, you already mentioned just the office,
the infrastructure,
but I mean, just the general perception as well. I mean, can you go into just how the Blackhawks had become an afterthought?
Yeah, I mean, well, you alluded to it. They were named the worst franchise, not just hockey, in all of sports by ESPN. Bill Wertz, I think, was named the worst owner. Rocky learned a few days after he took over that they were losing $30 million cash a year. 6 days into Rocky taking over, they couldn't make payroll. and they had to make a capital call to the liquor company to meet payroll. Again, the national economy is plunging, and Rocky's going, this isn't sustainable. It could take the whole company down, because, I mean, they were in banking, they were in real estate, two terrible businesses to be in 07, 08. And, you know, on the surface, what we all saw was like, oh gosh, the guy made all the right steps, and, you know, it was fated. You know, Dale Talon had already picked these great players, and, you know, it was fated to turn around. But there must have been 50 points where, if it had gone another way, I mean, they may have sold the team, they may have moved the team, original 6 hockey team. And so, you know, he was facing Everest.
And coming out of that, you know, I mentioned earlier, Forbes called it the greatest sports business turnaround in history. So what lessons do you think can be learned from a business perspective on how Rocky changed things from what Bill had run?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, quickly, the one thing is, yeah,
Nice
it's awesome.
There, yeah.
He let me, by the way, take some pictures of the cup by myself. Like, it was really cool.
Nice.
He had remembered that I wrote the story and invited me to the office. Like, come take some pictures.
Doubt Bill would have done the same.
Yeah, right. Bill would have done it. Yeah. Yeah, get over here. Yeah. But so business lessons, we alluded to it. You know, cutting your way to success versus investing smartly. Rocky says the best thing he ever did was hire John McDonough, the amazing marketing whiz from the Cubs. His best sell job, Rocky says. So that's one lesson. The other lesson is recognizing, sort of reading the room, you know, embracing your fans and knowing how hurt they are. Rocky said, you know, it wasn't that we were just bad, we were irrelevant. No one cared. And so embracing the fans by bringing back Stan Mikita and Bobby Hull, you know, mending all these fences. When Rocky took over, he said, you know, we were in the grudge business, and we're not going to succeed being in the grudge business. It's like there's a business upside to treating people right,
yep.
You know, and treating people well. And the outpouring, I think Rocky was a rock star for those years. I mean, he could barely walk the concourse without being mobbed. And it was because, you know, we had this team that we grew up with and loved and watched them, you know, Bill stick his thumb in our eye and take that from us. And Rocky, you know, of course it was cast of thousands, but gave that back. You know, there's a team generations grew up loving. And he gave that back, and I mean, that's pretty powerful.
Yep. And I mean, Bill never would have walked the concourse. He always watched from his suite. And Rocky
oh my God, no.
Had an aisle seat in the 100 level where anyone could come up, and
Rocky,
there's a cute story about a little boy that approached him. So
yeah. Yeah, completely different. Yeah, Bill holed up in his office with scotch. He drank a lot. And Peter. And just watched another horrible game. Yeah. And
so I have a couple more questions, but I'd like to open it up if any of you have questions you want to ask.
So obviously this is an expose that airs a lot of family dirty laundry. Rocky was on board. How was the rest of the family? Like, did Peter or everyone come to you like, don't do this? Like, what was the reaction from everyone else?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and as a corollary, a lot of people have asked, and I found myself wondering, like, I mean, look, I'm a journalist. I mean, I'm paid to dig out this kind of stuff, but couple of times it was so painful to hear. I was like, are you sure? I mean, are you good with this? And he said, put it all in. Rocky did, to his credit. And so, yeah, the siblings. As I say, Rocky and his siblings, I think he occasionally talks to his sisters, but not to Peter, and none of them would talk to me. And I really tried, because I knew Peter really came off looking bad. in this story, but you have to be fair. And I told him, I was like, Peter, I mean, I can tell the story or your story, or these people can tell your story, or you can. And he just, it's weird. It's almost like he had a psychic break, like a PTSD or something. He just cannot, when he was leaving, he left this beautiful, gracious letter saying how much he loved the team and pledged his loyalty and life to the team. But after Rocky started making all the changes, he stopped coming to games. He divested of anything having to do with the Blackhawks. He's still on the board of Wirtz Corp, and doesn't have anything to do with them. It's just really weird. He didn't come to any of the parades. Stanley Cups, man. That's sad.
Yep.
Anyway, and they actually sued Rocky for some little dumb thing after they'd won a couple of cups. So fortunately, I did find some relatives, like Bill's sister, Rocky's aunt, who backed up Rocky's side of the story. And she was very, very Aunt Betty, not to be messed with. and she told it. And so, yeah. And also, like, why would Rocky, he spent a lot of money promoting this. Like, why would he push something that is so filled with these intimate family details? And I'm still not sure. I mean, I think he wants it to be a legacy. He wants a story out there to be known. And his half of the royalties do go to the Blackhawks Foundation, which is good. I mean, it's not like he's trying to make money off of this. I mean, charity begins at home, but
there will be books for sale in the back
we
at
do
the
have
conclusion.
Hey, we have books for sale. Makes a great Christmas gift, and I'm happy more than I'd be thrilled to sign them for you. Yeah.
Hi, Bryan. Thanks for coming
Yes.
in. Excited to read your book.
Okay. Thanks.
So this is the perspective of a newer Blackhawks fan, right? So I didn't grow up, or I was too young to know the Arthur and Bill eras. So I think I find the timeline really interesting, and you alluded to this at the beginning, right? Because the dominoes were starting to fall a little bit in the right direction during Bill's final few years.
Yes.
They drafted a guy named Patrick Kane,
Yep.
a guy named Jonathan Toews in back-to-back years, kind of important, and you had Stan Bowman, who was already in the organization, kind of rising up already. Just from your perspective, if maybe take away the huge debt that they were in, that kind of Rocky found out about, but if Bill is still on the team for, say, all the way another 5 years, how do you think that plays out? I mean, they're still probably competing for Stanley Cup championships.
It's a great question, and people ask it a lot. Dale Talon made a lot of those moves, and he got fired shortly after Rocky came on board. He did something, just a business decision that was terrible. It's in the book. Cost the team millions, and he had a decent eye for talent, but he didn't know what he was doing. Anymore, general manager has to be a really shrewd businessman. Rocky's answer would be, and McDonough's and everyone else, is that we had stars before. Had a lot of stars, great players, and we were in last place every year. It's hard to say. I definitely don't believe they would have been, the kind of cup contenders that they were, because part of what took that core and made it into that, you remember that first cup team was so deep with great players, Dustin Byfuglien, right? I mean, the buff, big buff. And what attracted those players, though, was sellout crowds every night and brand new locker rooms and a new charter jet and big salaries, maybe overpaying, for some players. So, I really do believe it wouldn't have played out anywhere near the same. They probably would have had a little blip, maybe up, but as you know, it's shot up and sustained. It's a long time, 10 years, 11 years, being the top. They're struggling now. But, yeah, it's a great question, though.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm just curious. Much of this has been about how many negatives that Rocky has pulled from Bill and his family. Is there anything that he mentioned that he did take away as a positive that he, attributes some of his success to as well?
Yeah, from his family? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. A lot of people, like all the people I talk to, say Rocky is a lot more like his grandfather. His grandfather, was a tough SOB, but he wasn't like Bill, like sort of like just belligerent to be belligerent, just because he kind of got off on it, Arthur was at the end. I mean, it was all about business, and Arthur actually admired Rocky because he saw Rocky was standing up to Bill when no one else would, and so Rocky definitely says he took those lessons from Arthur mostly. And we get into this a little bit. Rocky's mom is kind of a shadow figure, right? I mean, he had a mom. And she was terrific. She was terrific, Joan. She died young of breast cancer. And she was the only other person who could put a check on Bill. And she was compassionate. She was fun. She invited Rocky's friends over, and Rocky took a lot, I think, from her. He certainly, that's where I think it's like, how after all these tough guys does Rocky turn out to be this kind of really super great guy? Tough, but good guy. And I think she had a lot to do with that in the family. So I would say those two influences, for sure.
What do you think the future holds for the Wirtz Corporation? Rocky has a son, Danny. He's an interesting character in the book.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll ultimately take over the corporation?
Well, I mean, it is an interesting question for all you Blackhawks fans. Like what is going to happen? First of all, Danny is a good guy. I mean, he's a good guy. He's a super smart guy. He's not he's not a Peter. He's a smart guy who would never be in the garage business like in the way that Peter and Bill were. And he is an interesting story. Did I lose him? When he was a young guy, he was like rebel guy. He moved to London. He was in the music business, colored hair, leather, the whole thing. And I think he got a nose ring, and Rocky
that was the one that
put the foot down there. It's like, okay, you can keep the nose ring, but I'm taking the car. One or the other, and so he took the nose ring out. And that gets back to the business piece of it. So Danny grew up in Google times, very tech savvy, very immersed in tech and emerging, the emerging digital music, and so he'd be great. He's poised to take over, and he's running essentially the liquor side now. But that succession plan of Arthur's ended with Rocky, so it's kind of up in the air now. It's not, I think Rocky would love Peter to take over, and Peter would want to do it. I mean, Danny, but we don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. I think it may wind up in court, actually.
Another one thing that struck me, and you kind of brought it to mind when you were discussing just how Rocky borrowed a lot from Arthur. My impression reading the book is that Bill and Rocky both ran the organization in the Blackhawks the way they viewed Arthur would want it to be run.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
they just had completely different views as to what Arthur would really like.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the way that he interacted with them, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And we only got a couple minutes left, so we're good. We're good. I mean, by all means, just shout out a question if you have. But for sure. I think that's what made Bill so bitter, was being ruled from the grave, as Rocky put it, by his father, Arthur. He just couldn't stand it that there was nothing he could do to keep the team out of Rocky's hands. And Bill planted these stories, in the paper And so did Peter, kind of spoke coyly, you know, when people would say, well, who's going to take over when you die, Bill? And like, well, we don't know. We don't really talk about that. And Peter would say things like, well, I don't know, but I would be honored, of course. You know, and I love the team, and I've been with them for a while, and I'd be great at it, but we don't know. And Rocky told me, he's like, oh my God. He said he would read that, and he'd go, that's the one thing we talked about, was the succession plan. Like, everybody knew it. It was no mystery. And as hard as Bill and Peter tried, and they tried everything, lawyers, they looked for any loophole, crack they could find in that succession plan, and they just couldn't do it. And I think it drove Bill crazy. It just really, and I think that's part of why he just, but can you imagine doing that? Like, this is why, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be political, but can you imagine taking a team just because of your personal feelings and hurts, a franchise beloved, and just wrecking it, letting it go? And there's one other thing, and it's interesting for Hawks fans to know, and it hadn't come out. I hadn't known. Bill had dementia in the last days. He was starting to have, it was escalating, and he was still running the team. So a lot of his decisions were informed by this escalating dementia. And there's an anecdote in the book, and it was really super sad. Bill knew Chicago like a taxi driver, and he was supposed to be at a board meeting downtown, and he called in. He was half an hour late, and he's never late, and he called in and he said, I'm lost. I don't know where the meeting is. And whoever answered the phone said, well, where are you? And he said, it's like a Joliet, I think. He's supposed to be downtown in the Loop. And yet, he still ran the team, and Rocky covered for him. Like, the family tried to not let it out that this was happening, and that's kind of a weird thing to know. It gets back to, you asked, like, what happened? Bill was, he wasn't perfect, but he was, in his day, he was a great businessman. But toward the end, he was just making crazy decisions. Like, I think they were going to put a Walmart near the family farm out there. And so he's like, yeah, buy a bunch of shares in Walmart so I can get on the board and give him hell. And it's like, okay, Dad. And they wouldn't do it. So, anyway.
Well, on that note, I think we can conclude this. We have a video of Blackhawks players reading reading the book that we'll close off on.
30 seconds.
Copies available in the back.
Makes a great Christmas gift.
Yep, and it's also available on Amazon and other bookstores.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's fun. Thanks, you guys.
I just bought this for my dad. It's gonna make a great gift.